Thanks for being here today. I'm Emily Castinger, the director of Capital Crossroads, and we're here today for 6 weeks of Make It Okay. This is week 4 of the 6-week series, and the topic today is Make It Okay and OneEconomy. So together we can work to make it okay. What is Make It Okay? It's an anti-stigma campaign that was created for individuals to encourage them to talk more openly about mental illness. By breaking the silence, we can help friends, neighbors, colleagues, loved ones, and more feel understood and supported. Make It Okay was brought to Iowa from Minnesota by the Healthiest State Initiative, who's a partner in this series. And within Make It Okay, there are various opportunities to engage, learn, talk, and share. So I encourage you to visit their website where you can learn more, take the pledge, become an ambassador, or register your workplace. Here are some of the sponsors of Make It Okay, the organizations and companies that really help make it happen and drive the mission forward. So thanks to Make It Okay sponsors. In addition, for this series, just wanted to acknowledge some community partners, those logos you see here, with another special shout out to Business Publications Corporation, who really started some meaningful community conversations around mental health a few years ago with their Lifting the Veil series. They have a series that I believe OneEconomy and the health group and maybe Jackie and others have contributed towards prior, but they did something this spring with Lifting the Veil and are doing another series this fall, kind of right after this one ends. So make sure to check that out with Business Publications. Okay, without any further ado, why we're all here today is to hear from our panelists. So Jackie, Reverend Whitfield, Brianne, and Janice, thanks so much for being here, and I will turn it over to all of you.
Thank you, Emily. Hello, I'm Jackie Easley McGee. I'm Director of Health Equity, Community and Diversity Services at Mercy One Des Moines. I also serve as the chair of OneEconomy's Health Subcommittee. Blueprint for Action is the culmination of the Directors Council facilitation of the many years work groups who have studied for many years data, held focus groups, and developed strategies to address the disparities in education, financial inclusion, employment, housing, and health in Polk County. Ironically, as we speak today in the backdrop of what I term the crisis within the crisis, this pandemic has ripped the Band-Aid off long festering wounds of these inequities. As we know more about social determinants of health, it is not hard to see while all those conditions have impacted our health, and more specifically, our mental health. You know, often we say when America catches a cold, Black America catches pneumonia. So according to the American Psychiatric Association, African Americans are more likely to have persistent symptoms of emotional distress, which is often characterized as cultural trauma. Yet only 1 in 3 African Americans receive mental health treatment. In Iowa, suicide is the second leading cause of death among Black males ages 15 to 24. Perhaps the most disheartening among the reasons for those statistics is the still present stigma of revealing a mental health condition. One of the strategies that our OneEconomy Health Committee is adopting is engaging the faith community and community organizations to serve as educational sites for safe places to discuss mental health issues. Thus, today, we are speaking from Corinthian Baptist Church, located in the heart of our central city. You know, I have the utmost respect and support for empowering voices that we now hear in the Me Too and the Time's Up advocacy as related to sexual harassment. But we now are in the need for a movement for all of us who live with or who are suffering ourselves from anxiety disorder, PTSD, and depression, among other mental conditions. And in 2014, in the sanctuary of this church, our 18-year-old son, Ty, who took his own life, was eulogized. So I am now intimately involved in our mental health advocacy, and I'm sharing his story to bring light to the darkness of those who are in pain. It's an honor to be here today with my fellow mental health champions in our community. And I'd now like to introduce our host for the meeting today, Reverend Jonathan Whitfield.
Good afternoon. I'm grateful to welcome to our church this wonderful panel to bring forth this continued discussion that is needed in our community about mental health. I've been in Iowa now 6 years, marking this year 2020, and it is my 30th year of pastoring. And over the span of this 3 decades, we've seen many things come that have approached us specifically from the mental aspects of human beings. The church has always been in the forefront, specifically in our communities, of a place where people can come to for assistance and for help, for places of peace while they're dealing with trial and tribulation, a place even for some kind of handout or rescue when they felt in trouble. One of the problems has been is that the church has found itself inept to fulfill all of the needs that people find themselves in because all of the needs of people are not just spiritual. There are issues of our physical, there are issues of our mental, there are issues of our social, whether it be financial, whether it be housing, whether it be education. All of these components of our community bring forth a well-rounded opportunity to have what our country calls life, liberty, and happiness. The church is a wonderful part of that, and as a foundation point, which, as Jackie has already said, perhaps a safe space, it's come time for the church to realize its place in the cog, if you will, of the wheel. It's time for us to realize the spoke that we are that brings forth this liberty and happiness to all people. And that is, we must learn to partner. We must learn to partner with the professionals of our neighborhood, that we can bring all of the things that are needed so that people can find a holistic view that points them to a successful way of living. I am forced into this mental health scenario by my own personal experience as well. While pastoring in New Jersey, before coming to Iowa, my wife was attacked in the basement of the church I was pastoring by a woman who was suffering from schizophrenia. We did not know all of the details of her mental illness, nor if we did we know how to handle or assist or come alongside in caring for her. And so as a pastor, and as well as a husband, I come to this table interested in making sure that the Church of God now forges itself into this communal view of understanding the totality of mental health, not only from a scriptorial position, but also from a social position, so that we can bring health and wellness to all that might come through our doors. So thank you for having me today.
Well, hello. I am Brenna Ward, born and raised in Des Moines, Iowa. I am a graduate of Iowa State and Drake University with a Master's of Counseling. I didn't realize the importance of being a person that represented community that did not seek out therapy services until I was faced with seeing not many people coming in that looked like me for services. That prompted me to move forward and get my license to provide mental health counseling for the state of Iowa. As being a mental health provider, I've been in this role of a clinician for about 3 years, but I have been in advocacy and counseling since the year of 2005. I know I started when I was 5. But anyway, what I learned during my time before becoming a mental health therapist is that many people of color do not seek out counseling services because they feel as if they will be judged, they'll be placed on sedative medication, and that they will be told that there is something wrong with them, they're broken, and that they cannot be contributors to our society. And in that, they do a lot of self-care techniques that we grew up learning. You would go to church, you would go to your grandmother's kitchen table, you would talk to your friends. And so it limited the access of the knowledge and wisdom needed to enhance and to better their lives. What I'm also seeing personally as a therapist is the idea of the definition of crisis is different for everyone. And so what I'm learning is that people from my culture, African American culture, they will seek out when they have exhausted all options. And therapy is not one of their first options. So I am so grateful to be sitting at this table to share my experience as a clinician, but also share the discrepancies I do see with the accessibility of services to people of color, especially African Americans. So thank you for allowing me to be here.
Hello, I'm Janice Schroeder, Chief Executive Officer of Children and Families of Iowa. And I've been with Children and Families of Iowa for a little over 20 years, and it's hard to believe that. So as I'm sitting here with colleagues, friends, and faith leader today, I'm feeling hopeful, but I am so glad to be here to have this courageous conversation. So when I think about the length of time that I have been involved in providing substance abuse and mental health services, not only with the organization, but just out in the community. So for me, it was something that I was always very passionate about, how I could make a difference in the life of kids, families, of individuals, and help them walk through their journey, whatever that may be. I think about how we were able to implement change when we had those courageous conversations. And this conversation that we're having today regarding mental health, it is courageous. So when we talk about how do you even bring it up, in child welfare, we talk about courageous conversations, and we also talk about being brave to come to the table to ask for help. For me, the neat thing is that we can't do it alone. It's not a one-person thing. It takes everyone sitting at this table talking about what isn't in place, where are the gaps, where are the opportunities for collaboration in this? Who else needs to be at the table, and why are they not at the table? That's what makes the difference. So when I think about this mental health journey now, what's making it so different? So over the past 8 or 9 months, all of us can probably kind of relate to what is really happening in the world. My mom always says to me, what is happening? Is this the end of the world? And so I constantly, and I'm explaining to her, again, what's going on as it relates to COVID-19. For her, living in a senior living environment, it's the changes that are occurring. It's the isolation. It's the loss of family. It's the loss of friends. It's the change that she cannot control in that. So as I'm sitting here with Brianne, and Brianne and I have had this conversation more than once over the years about what can we do to change that messaging. And now that we are in the pandemic, and many of you have heard it, and Jackie kind of talked about it earlier, a crisis in a crisis, but I heard T.D. Jakes describe it as pandemic within a pandemic, the pandemic as it relates to COVID-19. But then the pandemic, as it relates to racism, as it relates to the inequalities in education and health, as we look at what's happening in law enforcement. So the question that I have for us to kind of explore today, and Brianne, I'll start with you, is how do we as African Americans seek mental health treatment during this time of COVID-19? Are we seeking mental health treatment?
Absolutely we are. So for me, hold on, the mask, y'all, the mask. We're doing PPE around here. So here is the interesting thing. I, most often with new clients or potential persons who want service, they seek me out on Facebook. And they look to be my friend on Facebook. And then they want to like message me to kind of see, you know, and so that's the way of the world that we're in. What is surprising to me is that because COVID-19 has presented economic strain, layoff, lack of services, or restricted services, it's been interesting that people aren't coming through the front door to look for services. They're more likely looking for avenues that they're comfortable with and that they can control. And who would know social media is that thing? And so kindly, sometimes I ignore the request. And then they'll find me through maybe my business Facebook page or something like that. And so I do feel that there is a delayed response, because a lot of times it's like, no, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's, I'm not sleeping well. Maybe I'm not eating well. So they will do their own self-inventory before looking, because they don't want to be perceived as weak and or unable to handle this crisis, because it's no big deal. This is our life, isn't it? You know, so there's a lot of minimization and denying that there is a problem when maybe this pandemic has created a problem. Being at home with their family all day. If there was already, you know, intimate partner issues, they're intensified. Being at home trying to homeschool kids when that was not your profession. You didn't go to school for that. How long did you want to? But being able to notice that I can't self-emotionally regulate. This is terrible. And their coping strategies that may have worked on the weekends, maybe drinking a little, going out a little, you know, smoking a little, having fun with your friends.
So the restrictions.
Those restrictions, absolutely. So those negative coping behaviors, or those just normalizing coping behaviors, they're not working anymore. So then it's stepping out saying, maybe I do need the help. So.
Pastor, the same question, but from a faith perspective, and you've kind of alluded to it, and I think Jackie's talked about it, Brianne, you've talked about it. From a faith perspective, is there an intersection between faith and the professionals in addressing mental health, and do you see it intensify because of COVID-19?
Absolutely. The COVID-19 scenario has pushed us in ways, as what Brianne has just said, that we really didn't even understand. And I'll even push that not understanding point even further, that while there are those who are searching and seeking, when it enters into the faith community, the seeking and the terminology kind of changes. Because what we've had in church historical is the object of spiritualizing everything. And so my problem that I have now ultimately needs an object for me to point to as something that is bothering me. And that object, instead of it being me or my surroundings or my adjustments needed, it's the devil. You know, or it becomes this evil sense. So when you come to church, the conversation changes. When you go to Brianne, it was, you know, the husband or this, or I can't stand it. You came to church, it became the devil, you know, or somebody, Bob, grandma used to say, Satan on my track, you know, trying to turn me back, you know, that kind of thing. And so what that does is now you're throwing this wall up that blocks you from what you really need. And if the pastor doesn't understand that, he doesn't know how to help take that wall down. So he can refer people to what they really need.
Wow.
People are not having faith problems.
Right. So, and you brought up an interesting point. Because of the restrictions and the support and the camaraderie that you do get from church, and because we have the safety pieces now, people are not able to get that extra support that they need, and then they can't connect to you as readily as they had been prior to that.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Prior to that.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Another big one.
Wow.
And I'll even push that and say, and then some of the connections that we make become further unhealthy,
Yes.
or they become placebos, if you will. That's it, very well. You know, we sugarcoating the stuff we should really be looking at and accentuating the stuff that may not really be what's going on.
Right.
And so, and unfortunately, you know, church has helped that scenario in the area of mental health. We've done better in other areas,
Right.
but in the mental health area, we have helped this scenario to go more negative because the spiritual persona just hasn't updated itself, so that me and Brianne can partner.
There you go. There you go.
So you see that there is a need for partnering between the faith and professional community. There is an intersection.
Absolutely, and I'm prepared to even argue it biblically,
Okay.
because the Bible does not promote health from only a spiritual perspective. The scripture, New Testament scripture says, "Beloved, I wish that you would prosper and be in good health, even as your soul prospers." So the Bible shows a holistic scenario
Yes.
to the healing, the care, and the cure of a human being.
Healing, care.
Come on,
cure.
Pastor. I'm hearing.
And again, it's that whole
I like
holistic piece, because oftentimes, and Jackie and I have gone back and forth, as we educate others as it relates to mental health, you can't have good physical health without having good mental health.
That's right.
You can't have good mental health without having good physical health. But you've added in another piece as it relates to faith.
Yes.
Whatever your faith or who you
Yes.
believe your higher power is, it has to be in sync. Your thoughts?
Well, and one of my favorite scriptures is the body is the temple.
Yes.
The body is the temple, and along the same lines, one of the results of this pandemic, the Band-Aid that was ripped off the systematic racism in this country, shows the inequities among health outcomes for African Americans. And even with COVID, as we look at national and even state statistics, Iowans, as we speak today, about 74, maybe 75,000 have been afflicted with the virus. Of those, approximately 7% are African Americans in this state. And remember, we represent about 4% of the state population, so almost double. We've been afflicted with this virus. And why is that? Again, going back to our blueprint for action and social determinants of health, including education, housing, financial disparities, the opportunity. We are the ones who have been the frontline workers during this violence, during this virus. We are the ones who have been most at risk for exposure due to dense neighborhoods and housings, due to the type of jobs where we work every day, and due to comorbidities, meaning we are the ones who have the higher rates of diabetes and COPD and other conditions which make fighting this virus almost impossible, and certainly exasperating those conditions. So as we look at our body as the temple, we look at how can we as a community, what are these challenges that we face in really wanting to cleanse our soul during this period of time. And I wanted at least to have one really positive maybe outcome that we can look towards. because as we all have said, a barrier has been the stigma of wanting to receive treatment and even trying to seek it in, non-traditional ways that you have indicated. Telehealth now offers an opportunity, I believe, for individuals to, as Brienne has made us aware, seek treatment through a licensed medical professional virtually. And as we're learning, and as Pastor has said, even though we may be isolated from our normal interactions in a way that we really, want to be social, something like a mental health services where you can seek the treatment from a professional, from a medical professional through virtual means. Now, of course, we have to overcome barriers of not having bandwidth and technology available. And certainly I would advocate that that should be part of any remedy or recovery solution that our government is offering. But I do believe that telehealth services are going to really rise up as a way that looking at the challenges that particularly in the African American community we face, accessing healthcare might be one bright spot in this outcome. But we also face challenges regarding myths. And Pastor, you have alluded to the myth of the devil has often been present in many of the negative impacts that we've had. And certainly we know that systemic racism has led us to believe that we've often been medical guinea pigs and that we haven't wanted to participate in clinical trials. And we're now looking to finding a vaccine for this virus, and it's going to be probably not insurmountable, but an uphill battle to get an equitable base of individuals, because we were the ones in the Tuskegee experiment who met fatal outcomes as a result of the misinformation and the lack of appropriate medical care. We were the ones who, in many other instances, have been the first individuals to be looked at for these clinical things. So we need to be assured that the myth that we will be misinformed again about any vaccine is something that our medical professional looks to very wisely in terms of framing what is an accurate response. So I'm curious, panel, what are some myths that perhaps you have heard regarding mental health and treatment in our community as related to mental health? Pastor, you've already alluded to one.
Oh, well, I'll continue to speak from the church perspective. One of the myths, I guess, that we have that we need to definitely despair is more so answering properly the question in church, what is healing? Or I'll even push it further, say, what did God mean when he talked about healing? And I don't think that's been researched enough. I think we've just participated in it, as I said, from a spiritual perspective, as we've already declared, that's only 1/3 of the process. And so this is what you got to do. You got to get church, African American church has lived off of emotion, and it needs to start adding in or bringing about intellect, because healing, the myth of healing that has come to church has depended solely on what we might call the majesty or miracle of God. And while God, we believe in being all powerful and able to provide miracles as he wills, that is not how he desired us to live. God desired us not to live by miracle, but by message. And the message is to appropriate proper actions by us. So biblically, healing has several definitions, but one of those definitions comes from a word called theropon, which means therapy.
Oh,
And we missed that by not having study.
yeah.
Right.
You know, and it shows. And then you got to understand how we were created. We are created as a tripartite being.
Mm-hmm.
We are body, soul, and spirit.
Mhm.
There's or body, mind, and soul, which
Mhm.
would probably make it more appropriate for this discussion. So therefore, when God talks about healing, he doesn't just talk about healing of the soul,
Right.
which is what we see in church.
Mm-hmm.
He also wants healing of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
And he also wants healing of the body.
Right.
And so if I can go to my medical doctor to get my body healed, and I come to the pastor of the church to get my soul healed,
Mm-hmm.
I ought to be able to go to therapists
Right.
so I get some help with my mind. And that's the center, you know, of the whole activity of the
Right.
person.
Right.
And so the myth that I can come
Yes.
to church and church be the one-stop shop for my holistic healing
Mhm.
needs to be erased.
Okay. The messaging.
Yes.
It's the messaging.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm.
All right, I'm excited. So here we go. Woo! Y'all, this is my passion. And so, Ms. Jackie, before I answer about the myth, you made a lot of statements in regards to the statistics of African Americans and their physical health or mental health. One of my loves is to research historical trauma. One of my things, I can't effectively help people if I don't know what I'm helping them culturally with, right?
Right.
And so if you think about it, 1619 is when African descendants touched American ground. And their idea of coming here or being coerced to be here was to become property of the land to create the American dream. And the American dream was to build wealth and to provide prosperity, not for everyone on the land, but for a selected group, which is mainstream Caucasian culture. So in 1619, when that became the idea of who we were supposed to be, that meant that everything was limited as far as accessibility. Us getting medical care, us getting appropriate even clothing, us getting appropriate food. All of that was not given to the African descendant population. Well, then let's fast forward that. There's the Emancipation Proclamation. Then there's Juneteenth, which says, oh, now you're free, so enjoy. However, laws were not created to involve us.
Right.
We were still seen as chattel, as property. We weren't considered human. So you're telling me that we're free and we can go and do whatever we want. That is not true. Which instituted in the 1930s under President Roosevelt, he created the idea of the New Deal, right? So how in the world are we going to recover from the Depression? Everybody needs to own a home. Well, not everybody needs to own a home, just those who were included in the plan. That's when redlining became a deal, meaning there was color codes about where people were supposed to be living, and those were the properties that deserved investment, that deserved money. If you lived in the red zones, if you lived in the red line zones, you were exempt from appropriate medical care, appropriate education, and the list goes on and on and on, appropriate grocery stores, all of those things. And so we already are behind, right? So let's add a pandemic onto that.
Right.
We still have the same methodical thinking or myths that we have to work through in regards to, are we worthy for services? Will we be seen as welfare recipients, or will we be seen as ghetto if we come and get services? There's all these myths about the stereotype threat that was placed on African Americans since the beginning of our existence in America. So if we are trying to break down myths, we have to educate everyone about why is it us always in the lack or in the red, right? And as we explore that, I think then we can start to dispel this together, collectively, in unity. And it won't look like the Black people are the only ones barking for equality. So that would be my response to how do we dispel the myths of we're gonna look like takers if we continue to look for services, you know, not contributors or not givers, but takers. And we don't want to take anymore, so we'll just do it ourselves. And we know that that produces those comorbidities and those terrible coping mechanisms. So that's me.
So while I feel like that I'm in a group of people and I'm thinking, okay, like-minded people, we're gonna come up with a call to action. So as I've been thinking and building on it, it all comes together with the point of there's a lack of trust as it relates to accessing healthcare or even thinking that you can achieve more, get more, whether it's housing, whether it's education, whether it's employment. The intersection is if I don't have a good job or a job that also has benefits, I'm not going to be able to seek healthcare, whether that's physical health or mental health. We talked a little bit about the Tuskegee Institute, but we've also talked about if I access care, particularly mental health care, because of the stigma, you should be able to fix it on your own.
That's right.
You should be going to your family or your friend or your pastor to seek the help. But all pastors don't have that same thought as it relates to the holistic approach. And that God also puts in resources from a variety of different ways in order to help heal and support that. The other piece, because we are in Iowa, there are not going to be a lot of African American providers. But are there those that are culturally responsive that can also ask the right questions or seek the support of other African American professionals to help address the issue? And then the last but not least, how can we continue to work together to fill those gaps? How can we sit just like we're sitting today and saying, we need to change this messaging. We need to change this messaging today in everything we do, how we do it, in our marketing, in our educating, and as we're talking together. And if need be, we need to take the hand of someone and say, I'll walk with you. And make that connection. So then I get back to, so what is our call to action? What do we need to do differently as it relates to the faith community, as it relates to being a provider, as organizations, as hospitals? What is our call to action today? When I think about myself, I'm like, what can I do differently? What is the messaging? Who else needs to be at the table to have this discussion with us? What is it? Is it ours? Is it having more providers, more therapists that are representative of the population served? Your thought?
So for me, Ms. Janice, that's a loaded question.
Yes, that's what I
And
would.
we've got a great team to talk about that
That's right.
today.
We're gonna get in trouble with this.
But we're gonna get in good trouble.
Yeah.
That's right.
Good trouble.
We'll be in trouble.
That's right. I think that the answer to this question is layered. So oftentimes when a community or the world is in upset, disarray, distress, there is this wave of lists. Let's do a diversity training. Let's hire more Black people. Let's do these tangible, I can see items, visible items. And then once we check them off, we're done. We did it. Yay!
One and done.
One and done. And I think that is what is causing such inconsistent messaging or inconsistent allocation of resources because they are reactive. They're not proactive. And so for me being a provider, I think that this is what we need to keep this conversation going.
Correct.
We need to support each other at events.
Yes.
We need to be able to refer people holistically, because here's the deal. I am a provider, but I cannot serve everyone.
Right,
I need you, you need me,
right.
and this whole territorial thing about these are my clients and my people and my community,
Mhm.
that's a myth, and that needs to be killed.
Right.
Because none of us belongs, we are each other's keeper,
Amen.
right? And so we are not, I'm just gonna say it, we belong to God. He owns everything, so we don't really have nothing. We're just renting stuff, we're just leasing stuff. And so for me, if I can keep that in my mind and knowing that I don't have to be the be all,
Right.
or the expert, I can say I don't know and call pastor and say,
Right.
Pastor, I have this going on, how can we do that? So I think that would be one way of us doing it. I think another way also to do a call of action, I know we're getting low on time, I think that we also need to be mindful about what services are out there
Correct.
and also what services need help from us. If there's a service provider or there's a service agency that's lacking or struggling, can we rally around them and say, can we do an equitable,
Collaboration.
and like an equitable audit?
Yes.
Can we help you?
Yes.
How can we help you?
Yes.
Versus walking in and saying, see, y'all don't do nothing. See,
Right.
that's why I might come to y'all. Well, but they could come to them if we help them,
Right.
which is going back to pastor's partnership.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that is my tidbit on that.
Pastor.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, this is going to be
Good trouble.
Good trouble.
Good
trouble.
For the last 2 years, I've been co-facilitator of a group called Micah Group, which is a group of ministers who gather and have courageous conversations in private. It's facilitated out of Fuller University of Pasadena, California. And the last subject was courage.
Oh.
And so this is where the church is going to have to be thrusted into having enough courage to trust what God really put in place and not what we said he put in place. I think we forget biblically that the author Luke was a medical doctor.
That's right.
And if you read his writings, you will always see the hint of his dual degree, if you will, flowing out in his writings and his concern and his descriptive language when it comes to person and body and action. That comes out of his understanding, if you will, what they learned theologically as well as what they, from the physical body, the medical profession. What's in his writings is his keen ability to know when to talk God and when to talk the body. I'm saying that to say this. The church is going to have to be bold enough to know when we're not in the lead.
Wow.
We're going to have to be bold enough to know
Come on here.
that when it comes to the mental health profession,
Come on, Pastor.
we are not in the lead. We are the support.
Wow.
We are the support. It's the same way if a member comes to me and he's having a heart attack. I'm not in the lead. I'm the support.
Yes, yes.
And so if somebody's coming to me and here's where the partnership comes in. I need Bree to give me enough tools
Yes.
about mental health so I can make an appropriate assessment to say, you're having a mental situation.
And use the word.
And I use that word.
Use the word.
Use that word.
Not afraid to use the
Right.
word.
Make it okay.
And now, since Jackie's already said, I'm your safe haven. I'm the
Yes.
church
Yes.
of God. It allows me then to have that freedom, to have this open,
Yes.
appropriate conversation to say to you, trust me. If I'm the person that you trust me to get you to who you need to get to.
Yes.
And then I should be able to say, and I'll be there with you.
Right. There's your support and the soft hand officer.
Yeah.
There you
Keeping
go.
that community together.
There you go.
Yes. The problem is, in this whole action step,
Mm-hmm.
we keep coming to the table confusing God with church.
Mm.
We try to put the church in God's place.
Whoa, whoa.
The church has a role, and the church's role is to deal with humanity.
Come on.
And in dealing with humanity, we deal with the partnerships that are needed so that what God wanted could take place in this whole aspect of healing.
Oh my God.
And he wanted partnership between the pulpit. He wanted partnership between the private office.
Right.
He wanted partnership with the physical examination.
Right.
That's what the Lord wanted. And so I think, and that's it, here's where I'm getting in trouble, I think we are majorly part of this problem
Yes.
because we don't know our role in this.
But we are also part of the solution.
But we can also be part of the solution. Yes.
As we get ready to close with questions, as you can see, we are individuals who are passionate about supporting the needs of our community and African community. But we believe in utilizing always non-traditional whatever. And Pastor mentioned Micah. I think it is so appropriate to perhaps end this discussion on African Americans and mental health with the words from Micah 6:8, which he has told you humanity is what is good. Only to practice justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God.
Yes.
Emily? Thank you, Jackie. And now I just want to open it up to the audience. You guys, you hit a lot, and thank you for being vulnerable and honest and open. I have a colleague texting me while she's walking and listening along about all of the things that you're saying and how much they're resonating with her. So she can't chat them here, but I will encourage anyone on the call to submit any questions in the chat for the group. And I'll read them as and if they come in. Or people are welcome to speak up if they are on the phone.
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, Nicole.
Hi there. My name is Nicole Schroeder, and I spoke with Jackie, 2 weeks ago, about the 1619 project that the Greater Des Moines Leadership Institute is putting together. And I'm on the healthcare team, and we would like to know what are the action items that we can take as white Americans to support our communities of color to help advance awareness and understanding and support.
Well, thank you for asking and posing that question. And I believe you're taking the first step today by having this courageous conversation with us and listening and really hearing what we're saying. As Brianne has really eloquently stated, that for us, many years we have felt we have been invisible in terms of what we have felt, and even going to seek medical advice, including mental advice, that we have not always received the appropriate care. And so any partnering, any allies are welcomed as we seek what we feel is culturally appropriate care, but also just to be allies and partners as we walk this journey together.
Can I answer too?
Yes.
Hey, Ms. Nicole, I would strongly suggest that your team figure out if they have any biases. So they should probably do their own scan to see if they have a strong belief in stereotype threat, and if they have any implicit bias that causes them to overlook, deny, and or, this is a strong word, but I can't think of another one, but to demonize, demean another person of color or from different culture.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking, Nicole. Let's see, we have Terry Spears from the Des Moines Pastoral Counseling Center asking, what are your ideas for mental health organizations who are seeking greater cultural diversity and how to reach out to Black therapists to join our clinical team?
Here we go. Take two.
So I want to add, we had through the OneEconomy Health Committee, we convened a group of African-American mental health professionals. And just to note that it was not all inclusive, but just to begin that dialogue. And we had a couple of very rich conversations. And so we do have a very small list, but it is about making that connection. So I would encourage you to reach out to the OneEconomy Health Committee, and we can provide you with the list. And I'm going to pass it on to Brianne, because it is about making sure that we make those connections, because it is very isolative. We're African American, but that doesn't mean that we can only work with African Americans. We can work with everyone, just as in the white community, you also work with us. We can work with you as well. So what a great opportunity to reach out to, like, for example, NASW or through the LMHC, their professional organization, and saying, hey, asking the question. We have to be not be afraid to ask the question. We are looking for clinicians that represent the populations that we serve, and we're looking for African-American clinicians. We're looking for Latina clinicians. So let's not be afraid to ask specifically for what we want.
Before we go to Brianna,
Y'all did it.
one resource, and I believe Emily's going to show our resource page next, is when you go to the OneEconomy website, Blueprint for Action is the name of the report, where we have outlined strategies that we would like to see to address some of the disparities in this community. As Janice has pointed out, we do have some research, including the list of counselors, therapists in our community that will provide what we call culturally appropriate care. And so, Brianne, take it away in terms of what does that mean?
Well, you both of you ladies did a fabulous job answering that question. There are so many ways that you can just approach the idea of, we just want to partner. And even if that's not you receiving what you're asking for, it's just the opportunity for you to get to know what you're asking for. And so if you've never had an African American in your staff, it might be a little unsettling to get someone in your staff and they're like, I don't feel comfortable here. So I think it's just, let's partner and phase this thing out. Can we have lunch together? Can we commune together? Can I get to understand what your needs? You can ask me tough questions about maybe the unknowns, and then that's when you can start to hire staff of color. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, one last question, and then I'll share those resources. And I did put in the chat the link to the OneEconomy reports that Jackie mentioned. So in an earlier kind of answer to the first question, you had mentioned a bias assessment. Is there one that you would recommend, or are there kind of thought leaders or resources that come to mind as it relates to bias assessments?
I have not come across any assessments, and ladies and gentlemen, if you have, let me know. But there are wonderful trainers in the area. You're looking at one, by the way. So Forward Consulting can definitely help out with that. There's Project Iowa. There's a lot of agencies. If you're looking for someone to come in and to assist, you can find those people. So if you wanted to contact me personally, I would be able to help you and navigate that.
I will share Brianne's website in the chat as well. Janice, did you have anything else to add? No?
No, the only thing I was thinking about, the one assessment that is primarily done within the medical field, and I cannot remember the name of that, but Dr. Chris Martin from St. Ambrose University, she's done a lot of work on implicit bias. So I would Google her, Dr. Chris Martin from St. Ambrose University. to look at the work that she has done. And again, I was going to echo that Brianne also does an excellent job at training as well. And
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think we can provide, I'll take a look in the blueprint for action. We can provide some suggestions for implicit bias training. I know that in healthcare, we have some specific, what we call the cultural competency stratum, where you can see where you are and where you can grow. And so we'll make sure we include that in the resource materials. Kind of a self-reflection on where you are in terms of implicit bias.
Also, I'm sorry, Miss Emily. Also, I forgot United Way is doing a challenge right now, an equity challenge. It is free, and you can sign up to be a sponsor or a supporter. But what that is for how many days?
for 21 days.
For 21 days, 21-day challenge, and they'll be providing information, follow-up questions, and ways to engage. So yes.
Yeah, so literally all you have to do is go to their website, United Way of Central Iowa, and it says a 21-day challenge. And for the 4 weeks, literally, we're looking at systemic racism. It's looking at it from a health perspective. It's looking at education and justice and more of the full realm of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it's through reading materials, it's podcasts, it's TED Talks, an opportunity for you to grow individually, or you can do it in group form, but it will be awesome. The goal is to achieve 200 organizations, and from what I understand, they're at 300. And
Corinthian Baptist Church is
awesome.
And I'm one.
And Thereby is another. And then the other is that we want to really reach out to 10,000 individuals, and we've got 5,000 already signed up. So it's not about checking the box. It's about how you are going to make a difference and what you are going to do in your walk.
That's right. Sorry, that's what I'm saying.
No, good point. That'll be, I'm really looking forward to that. Good opportunity to learn and do and take action. So thank you for that plug. That's a good segue into just really thank you all for being here. And we so appreciate your time. I know from others who have been on this call, they're super impressed with you. You received many accolades in the chat. So thank you on behalf of all listeners and organizations.
We also would like to thank our technical advisor, Barry Jones, who you cannot see, but he's in the room with us today. A really talented God who is here volunteering with us. We do want to thank Barry.
Well done, Barry. These are just some additional resources that we like to share at the end of each panel. They kind of target different groups and have different areas that they can serve of communities, but there are dozens of resources out there. This is just a quick hit at a few. Children and Families of Iowa is the organization that Janice is with, of course, so they provide a variety of resources. Encourage you to check them out if you do not already know them. And we have 2 more weeks of Make It Okay coming up. September 24th is the Arts and Make It Okay. We have 4 panelists for that panel. And week 6 is Make It Okay During COVID, a variety of health professionals who will be featured. So that's really it for today. We appreciate your guys' time again. And this recording will be available online, hopefully in the next week or 2 on the Healthiest State website. So we'll make sure to share that as well. Thank you again, and have a great rest of your week, everyone.